The city was still waking when I pressed my palm against the cool glass of my corner office window. From the 23rd floor, the skyline looked like a painting brushed in muted gold by the rising sun. Inside, the hush of early morning felt like a private cocoon, the only sound the soft drip of coffee into the pot behind me. I adjusted the sleeve of my ivory silk blouse and caught a glimpse of my reflection, hair pulled into a sleek knot, a trace of tiredness beneath my eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. To the world, I was Olivia Parker, founder of Parker and Company Media, the woman who built an empire out of late nights and stubborn dreams. But behind the polished surface, there were chapters of my life I rarely allowed myself to revisit, chapters that still ached like a half-healed bruise. My phone buzzed against the glass desktop, a sudden vibration that sliced through the quiet. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Something, intuition, maybe, made me swipe. Olivia. A voice said, fragile and familiar. It's Mom. The single word tightened something deep in my chest. For years, I had rehearsed what I would say if this moment came. Yet now, my throat felt dry as desert air. We'd like to see you, she continued. A pause. Your father and we want to talk. Please. The irony nearly made me laugh. After everything, after the night they told me to leave when I was 7 months pregnant, now they wanted to talk. 7 months pregnant. I still remember how the November air bit at my cheeks the night everything shattered. Our old farmhouse sat back from the road, its white paint chipped and dulled by years of Midwest winters. I'd driven there after a long prenatal checkup, hoping, naively, that my parents would finally soften when they saw the swell of their first grandchild beneath my sweater. I stepped into the kitchen carrying a paper bag of groceries, the smell of cinnamon and roasted chicken from Mom's oven wrapping around me. For a fleeting second, it felt like the house I grew up in, warm, familiar, safe. Then Dad looked up from the kitchen table. His jaw tightened the way it always did before a storm. Mom stood beside him, arms folded, her face pale and set. Olivia, Dad began, his voice heavy with disappointment. We've talked this through. We can't support this situation. My hands trembled around the grocery bag. This situation? You mean my baby? You've refused to marry the father, Mom said, eyes glistening but unyielding. We raised you with values. People will talk. The words hit harder than the November wind outside. You care more about people talking than your own grandchild? My voice cracked, and the paper bag slipped to the floor, apples rolling across the linoleum. Dad pushed back his chair. We can't have you living here while you bring this shame. We think it's best if you leave tonight. For a heartbeat, the world tilted. The familiar hum of the refrigerator roared like a freight train in my ears. Mom's lips trembled. Your Aunt Grace left something for you, she whispered, sliding a small velvet pouch across the table. She always believed you'd find your own way. Inside the pouch lay a silver locket etched with a single word, brave. Aunt Grace, gone 2 years now, had been the only one who never judged me. I clasped the locket in my palm, feeling its cool metal steady my racing pulse. I wanted to scream, to beg them to reconsider. But something stronger, something that felt a lot like Aunt Grace's quiet strength, rose in me instead. Without another word, I slipped the locket around my neck, grabbed my coat, and walked out into the sharp night air. The cold sliced through my sweater, but a strange clarity warmed me from within. If they wouldn't stand beside me, I would learn to stand alone. The first night on my own smelled of stale motel sheets and cheap disinfectant. I sat cross-legged on the bed, the silver locket cool against my skin, one hand resting on my round belly as my baby shifted inside me. Each tiny kick reminded me that someone was counting on me to be brave. Those first months were a blur of survival. I found a small apartment above a bakery that smelled perpetually of warm bread and vanilla sugar. The rent barely fit my budget from part-time shifts at a bookstore and late-night data entry work, but the scent of freshly baked croissants seeping through the floorboards each morning made me feel, if only for a few seconds, safe. When my daughter, Harper, arrived in early spring, the world narrowed to her soft breaths and downy hair. I spent nights rocking her under a single lamp, locket glinting against her blanket. Every sleepless dawn, I whispered the word engraved inside it: brave. The first real break came when I overheard a customer at the bookstore talking about a local community college course in digital marketing. Something about the phrase lit a spark. I enrolled, clutching Harper's carrier like a lifeline, and spent every evening learning about web design and storytelling. There were nights when exhaustion pressed so hard on my shoulders I thought I might collapse. Some days I arrived at class with spit up on my sleeve and a hollow ache where energy should have been. But each time self-doubt crept in, I fingered the locket and imagined Aunt Grace's knowing smile. Professor Elaine Whitmore noticed my work before the semester ended. A seasoned marketing consultant with silver-streaked hair and a laugh that carried like wind chimes, she lingered after class one night. "You've got a gift for this," she said, sliding one of my project mock-ups back across the desk. "Your instincts, your storytelling, people will pay for that. Ever thought about starting your own agency?" The idea sounded absurd. I barely had enough for diapers, let alone a business. But Elaine pressed a business card into my palm. "Call me when you're ready. Talent like yours shouldn't stay hidden." It took nearly 2 years, countless side jobs, and nights of planning at the kitchen table while Harper colored beside me, but Parker and Company. Media slowly took shape. Our first client was a small coffee roaster. I built their online presence for the cost of a month's groceries. They recommended me to a boutique clothing line, then a regional charity. Each success stitched a little more confidence into the fabric of my life. By Harper's 3rd birthday, I'd moved my office into a bright loft with exposed brick and windows that flooded the space with morning light. My parents received the occasional postcard, polite updates about Harper's milestones, but I kept the truth of my growing company to myself. There was power in that secrecy. Power in knowing that every late-night brainstorm, every client win, every dollar saved was built on the strength they had doubted I possessed. When Harper laughed, head thrown back, curls bouncing, I heard Aunt Grace in that sound, the quiet triumph of a legacy of courage. 4 years passed before I heard my parents' voices again. The call that morning, Mom's soft, almost trembling request to see me, had left me restless the entire day. By late afternoon, the city's winter sun had faded into violet dusk. I stood in the lobby of Parker and Company. Media, nerves taut beneath my tailored navy suit, the locket resting like a steady heartbeat against my collarbone. I hadn't told Harper they were coming. At 5, she was busy in the playroom behind my office door, stacking wooden blocks and humming her own invented songs. I wanted this meeting to be mine first before I decided how or if they fit into her life. When the elevator chimed, I turned to see them step into the lobby. For a heartbeat, the sight of my mother's familiar scarf, the one with tiny embroidered daisies, pulled me backward in time. Dad's hair was grayer, his shoulders more stooped, but his eyes carried the same steady weight I'd known since childhood. "Olivia," Mom said, her voice a whisper of both relief and uncertainty. I led them through glass doors into my office. Their eyes widened as they took in the polished walnut desk, the floor-to-ceiling windows framing the twinkling city, the framed photos of Harper and me, her gap-toothed grin stealing the spotlight in every shot. "This is yours?" Dad asked, his brows knitting as he took in the logo etched on the glass wall. "Parker and Company." "Media." "All of it," I said evenly. "Built from the ground up." I watched the realization ripple through them. The silent calculations of time and effort, the quiet dawning that while they'd imagined me barely scraping by, I had been building something they couldn't have pictured. Mom's eyes shone. We had no idea." I moved behind the desk, resting a hand on the leather chair. "How could you? We haven't spoken since you asked me to leave." The words hung in the room like an approaching storm. Dad shifted uncomfortably, his voice rough. "We thought we were protecting you. From judgment. From mistakes." I let out a slow breath. Protecting me by abandoning me? When I was 7 months pregnant. Silence. The city lights glittered beyond the glass, indifferent and bright. Harper's giggle floated through the cracked door, and both of them turned toward the sound. Mom pressed a hand to her mouth. "That's your daughter?" she whispered. Her name is Harper, I said. She's my everything. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Mom stepped forward, eyes pleading. Olivia, we were wrong.
We see that now.
We've missed so much. We'd like to be part of her life. If you'll let us. I searched their faces. Lines of regret etched deep, pride softened into something almost fragile. This was the moment I'd imagined on sleepless nights, them standing here, realizing the cost of their choices. I built this company, I said quietly, while raising Harper on my own. Every contract, every client, every late-night deadline, without a cent of your help. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the life we have. Dad lowered his gaze. You should be. We are. The locket at my neck felt warm, as if Aunt Grace herself stood beside me. I finally met their eyes. If you want to know Harper, if you want to be part of our lives, it can't be on your terms anymore. It has to be on mine. They both nodded, the weight of their silence carrying an unspoken apology. I stayed quiet for a long moment, the weight of years of silence pressing against the polished walnut desk. The only sound was Harper's sing-song voice drifting from the playroom. I traced the edge of Aunt Grace's locket with my thumb, letting its steady curve ground me. When you told me to leave, I said finally, my voice calm but firm, I promised myself I'd never let anyone decide my worth again. If you want to know Harper, if you want to know me now, there are conditions. Mom flinched, but she didn't look away. Dad straightened as though bracing for a verdict. First, I continued, you must acknowledge what happened. Not excuses. Not we thought it was best. I need you to say it. You hurt me, and you left me when I needed you most. Dad's jaw tightened, but then his shoulders sagged. We did hurt you, he said hoarsely. We left you when you needed us. Left you when you needed me. His eyes glistened. Mom's chin trembled. I am so sorry, Olivia. I can't take back those nights you spent alone. I wish every day I had chosen differently. A slow breath loosened the knot inside me. Second, I said, Harper is not a project to fix or a symbol of past mistakes. She is her own little person. If you're in her life, you will love her for who she is, not as a way to rewrite history. Mom pressed a hand to her heart. Of course. We only want to love her. Third, I added, my voice sharpening just enough, I need boundaries. No judgments about how I raise her, no subtle lectures about values. If you disagree with my choices, you talk to me with respect, or not at all. Dad nodded slowly. You have my word. I let the words settle. For years I had imagined this conversation as an angry showdown, but standing here now, I felt something unexpected. Not vengeance, but a deep, unshakable clarity. Mom stepped closer. And your fourth condition? I smiled faintly. That you stop hiding from your own dreams. You gave up so much to keep up appearances. Take a class. Travel. Do the things you've been too afraid to try. Show Harper and me that growth never stops. Her eyes widened and then softened. I will, she whispered. Dad glanced at Mom, then back at me. We'll do it. All of it. The air in the office felt lighter, as if some invisible door had opened. I realized this wasn't about punishing them, it was about protecting the life Harper and I had built and offering them a chance to grow with us, not over us. Harper's giggle rang again, bright and pure. I turned toward the sound, my heart steady. Then, I said quietly, let's begin. A week later, the scent of cinnamon rolls drifted through my kitchen as Sunday sunlight spilled across the countertops. Harper sat at the table with a grin as wide as the morning sky, her little hands sticky with icing. Across from her, Mom laughed, an unguarded, bell-like laugh I hadn't heard since childhood. Dad poured orange juice with careful hands, his movements slower, gentler. When Harper handed him a lopsided cinnamon roll, he accepted it as if it were a treasure. I leaned against the doorframe, the locket warm against my collarbone. Watching them together stirred a quiet ache, not of pain, but of something healing. Over the past days, my parents had done what I once believed impossible. they'd listened. They had met Harper on her terms, letting her lead the conversation about dolls and dinosaurs, asking questions instead of offering advice. Not once had they spoken of the night they sent me away without first acknowledging the hurt it caused. Mom glanced up and caught my gaze. For a heartbeat, I saw her as more than the mother who'd failed me. I saw her as a woman, carrying her own regrets, daring to begin again. After breakfast, while Harper chased her shadow in the yard, Dad joined me on the porch. The winter sun painted the grass in pale gold. He cleared his throat. "We're proud of you, Olivia. Not just for what you built, but for the woman you became." The words settled over me like a gentle weight. I turned the locket in my fingers, feeling its familiar engraving.
Brave.
Aunt Grace had given it to me on the night I left, but its meaning had shifted. Back then, bravery meant surviving. Now, it meant forgiving. Not forgetting, but choosing to move forward without letting the past define every heartbeat. I looked toward Harper's laughter and felt something loosen deep inside. "Thank you," I said simply. Mom stepped onto the porch, slipping her arm through Dad's. "We'll keep proving it," she said quietly. I believed her. The breeze lifted my hair and carried the sound of Harper's giggles across the yard. For the first time in years, I felt the world settle into a kind of peace I hadn't known I was waiting for. I touched the locket once more and whispered the word that had carried me through every sleepless night, every lonely morning, every hard-won victory, my own quiet vow to the woman I had become.
Brave.